We're going to get started momentarily. We're just trying to figure out our public comment cards. If you're here to speak on an item, we have a different system. I need you to go back to the back of the room. You'll see a kiosk. Can you please fill out all the necessary information so that your name could appear on the iPad that I will be using to call your name. So if you haven't done that yet, please see the sergeant. Sir, did you want to speak? Okay, Sergeant, can you please help him understand our new process so to make sure that he's aware that we're no longer using physical paper to fill out a card. We need you to do it in the back of the kiosk. Thank you. Hi, Paul. Do you have an extra pen on you?
I don't know yet.
I know soon. I know I have.
Oh, jeez.
You mean that they're off for item?
Thank you.
Sure. What's he saying? No, pavement. Oh, yeah.
The full 3 minutes.
Thank you.
So what card did they put?
What's he sign? Just have our motion.
So these people are probably, they probably don't understand the process. They probably.
What are we doing? We're gonna.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee. We're joined by all of our members, Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Kokori, Mr. Koretz, and Mr. Cedillo. I'm going to start with taking public comment at this time. Is that okay? And maybe there was a confusion, but I have a number of cards for general public comment. I'm going to call you up to the table, and I just need you to clarify whether you meant to just speak on general public comment or you meant to fill out a card for a specific item. Robert Cowart?
He's on item 1, ma'am. He's on item 1.
Item 1. You want to come forward, sir? Terrace? Do you want to come forward, sir? So are both of you item 1? Okay. Okay, I'm going to call that. So Terrace? Okay, come forward. Corey Hampton? Okay. Can we provide a chair for him for our speakers, please? And Josh Lukes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to come forward? So all 4 of you only want to speak on item number 1.
Correct.
Okay, you don't want to speak on, you don't have any general public comments, just item number 1. Okay, so there's 1 minute. And we're going to start with Robert. Good afternoon. You have 1 minute to speak on item number 1.
Okay, I'm a property owner. I have 1 building. I had the same trash company, Crown, for 24 years. And then I was informed that I had to change to Republic. And my bill went from $66 initially to $85. And I thought, well, that's not too bad. You know, what am I going to do? I'm a captive audience. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly my bill was $230, and they replaced the bin with the same large black bin that I had, but then a small blue bin, as you're aware of. And there was nowhere to put it. So they put it on the front street of my building, and people were putting couches and chairs and everything in there. And I called them. I said, I have nowhere for that. So they said, we're going to have to reduce the size of your bin. We're going to have to they gave me a very small general bin for trash, and then a small blue bin for my building, which, that was a minute?
That was a minute. The clock's right in front of you. I'm gonna let you just finish. Mr. Herman, please stop the clapping. Just wrap up your thought, and then I have to move on to the next speaker.
That ended up going to $230, and the bin was not lockable, and they said I would be fined $500 if there was something in the bin that wasn't recycling. And I said, I can't. It's in an alley. What can I do? So they charged me $100 plus the lock to put a lock on the bin.
Okay, sir.
So I feel like that's salt in the wound.
All right. Thank you, sir.
There's more, but that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Terrace.
Just the one, Terrace Castle.
Okay, but each one of you filled out a card, so each one of you, stop the clock for just a second, please. Each one of you has a minute. So who wants to speak first?
I will.
You want to speak first? Okay, you have a minute, and it's right in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, and so
We
that's,
are representing the owner of SKB Properties, and we have 4 buildings. And we kind of have the same situation as his. All of our trash has escalated like 90%. We used to pay $600 a month. Now we're paying $1,200 a month. And they charge us for opening the gate, and they're always forgetting their keys. And then they charge that on this bill for us. And the trash cans, we can only put certain things in the trash cans, otherwise they will take them out, and they will charge us extra if we put too much in the trash can, and I'm finished.
okay, thank you very much. Start the clock again. Corey?
Yes, my name is Corey, and one particular building, we have 3 50-unit buildings, one 24-unit building. One of them, we had NASA. The bill this time, 3 years ago, was $213 a month. Now we've been switched to Athens. The bill is now $1103 a month. Now, we used to have the cans inside a gate, so people couldn't dig in the canned stuff. They wanted to charge us $15 to open up the gate each time. I said, I can't afford that. They said, well, why don't you put it in the alley? Once I put the stuff in the alley, everybody dumped their garbage in my cans. Everyone digged in the cans. They looked for glass and stuff to recycle, but they made a mess. Now I have 4 buildings with 3 to 6 empties that have been empty for 3 months because I can't control what my back alley looks like.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. Thank you. Our next speaker is Josh, but before you start, let me call 3 other speakers.
I thought my minute was up already. I heard the beep.
No. Your minute hasn't started. I said, hold on for just a second. I'm going to call 3 more speakers. Okay.
Sure.
Leonid Zekman, are you here? Jairo Angulo? Sorry? Go ahead and take a seat. Joy Bates? Joy Bates, are you here? You want to come forward? Okay, and the 3 of you that I just called up, you're here to speak on item number 1, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Josh, you have 1 minute.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you all for the opportunity to speak here. There are a few points I want to be very concise. I am an owner of a handful of small apartment buildings, 9 units, 8 units, 6 units, and I'm also a commercial broker representing a lot of private capital, a lot of people who are voters, of course, who are not institutional level investors. These are private investors who have invested a lot of money and a lot of time in taking care of their properties so they have something for retirement. Now, obviously, we're restricted by rent control and some of the issues that exist there, but this new imposition of this Recycle LA program has created multiple problems. I'm going to be very quick with this. One, these companies now have the ability to overcharge now that they have a monopoly, and it's completely unchecked, and I believe that whoever here in the city allowed them to do it, it's criminal. When I say that it's unchecked, aside from having a number of my clients whose trash bills have gone up 400%, being levied gate fees, valet fees, and other things, well, that's a shame because I was going to get into some really good stuff. So potentially being billed for tenants not separating the trash properly from recycling to non-recycling, and it's very problematic considering I have a guy who's probably a meth addict and I can't get rid of the guy.
Thank you, sir.
It's really going to be difficult to get him to separate the trash and not have me penalized.
Thank you very much. Leonid, you filled out a card for item number 2 and also general public comment.
no,
I'm sorry,
one.
item number 1.
Yeah.
And general public comment. Do you want your,
No, 1.
just 1? Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I am representing Villa España in Encina townhouses. I am the owner and the member of the board. Our townhouses were built in 60s, and according to city environmental and sanitation, we don't have any places to put the big bins for the garbage. it's impossible to put. So the company were charging 1,800, and then suddenly they started to charge 12,000. Then they said, okay, 12,000 too much, 9,000, and finally they charging 7,600, which is 4.5 times more. And they never separated. They gave only partial of the people blue bins, and another doesn't give anybody. And they use these blue bins with the regular in the same trash can. They do anything new. They do the same thing, and they shamefully increasing 4.5 times. We cannot pay this money, 7,600 a month. It's impossible. It's a monopoly city, and this is the wrong thing. And the company doing exactly the same, whatever
you,
they
sir.
did all the time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jairo Angulo.
Yes, in the last 2 years that Athens was imposed on us, I have opened at least 23 issues with LA Sand. One of the recent responses from LA Sands is, you're on your own, we take no responsibility for anything here. Yesterday, I took the trouble to mail everybody in the commission an email with date and time stamped photographs showing and documenting the horrendous service that Athens has imposed on our streets. They have multiple routes. Their trucks are on the street every day. They impede street cleaning schedules. Last Friday, they left the bin from the building next to ours on the street from late Friday afternoon all the way to Monday. Their service is appalling. Okay, our rates have doubled since we've had Athens, and there's really nothing we can do. Yesterday, I sent all of you a link about a company that actually helps trash haulers assess the garbage and develop efficient schedules, which they don't have.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Joy Bates.
Yes, we have the same type of complaints that the previous speakers mentioned. A very costly service. Every month we have fees that have doubled and sometimes tripled. Poor customer service. The trucks damage our concrete and asphalt. There's a delay in pickup in a timely manner. They leave the dumpsters in the street too long, and the trash overflows and there's a delay of pickups. We've complained about this where they've missed days for pickup and they've charged us for overage on those days. And we brought this to their attention, but they won't do anything about it. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Thank you, guys. I'm going to call the next group of speakers. Janet Gagnon. Janet. Mary Beth Levine. Is Mary Beth here? Beverly Kenworthy. And Brian Aerosmith. Janet?
Janet Gagnon with...
Hold on for just a second. It looks like you filled out a card for item number 2 in general public comment. You just...
No, 1 and 2.
I know, but do you only want to speak on item number 1 or you want to speak on item number 2 as well?
Both.
Okay. So you have 2 minutes?
Okay. So
Go ahead.
1 minute is for one. And
1 minute is for one item, and then your second minute is for your second item.
Thank you. Janet Gagnon with the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. We represent over 10,000 mom and pop owners. These are predominantly the people that have 10 units or fewer. We do also middle and larger as well. My main concern today is with the RSOs, the rent stabilized buildings. This is a tremendous increase in trash costs, anywhere from 200 to 600% in increase, and we have a survey from our members backing that up. And these are the most affordable rental units that are currently in the city. If we don't do something to ameliorate this increased cost, that we're going to lose those buildings. They're going to be razored, which means destroyed, and replaced either with condos or luxury apartments, and everyone is going to suffer. So I urge an exclusion for all RSO buildings from this so they can continue or go back to using the Bureau of Sanitation, which is charging much cheaper rates because they don't have the same requirements as under this Recicla program. Also, on the second issue, which is the motion by Rodriguez and also Cedillo. We appreciate that exclusion, and we'd ask that to be expanded to include those RSO properties. The third element as well is the 4 and under. We have been given mixed information that one person is telling us that this program is limited to buildings with 5 or more units, but the 4 and under are excluded because they're more similar to residential. They have residential mortgages, and yet when people are trying to go and use the Bureau of Sanitation, they're being refused. They are calling the Recicla number and they're being told they cannot go back to the Bureau. And so I'm just asking for clarification so that our members that can actually receive the Bureau of Sanitation directly can access it. Whatever that process is, we just need to know so we can get it into our members' hands. One note of new information aside from access is overweight, that we've been told haulers are saying it's overweight just by the feel of the truck and no actual proof otherwise.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mary Beth?
Yes. I own 2 apartment buildings in Los Angeles, and I have basically the same complaints that everybody else has complained about. I don't want to repeat them. But one that I haven't heard is trying to deal with customer service. When I call the Athens number, I get the Bureau of Sanitation, and they tell me I can't deal with Athens directly, and someone will call me back, and sometimes someone does from Athens, and they've given me a direct Athens number. So it's completely confusing. It takes literally weeks to months to resolve a problem like a missed pickup credit. They shuffle me around from one person to another, and they are just, sometimes I just give up because I can't spend the time on it. And I figure, well, maybe it won't happen again, but it always happens again. So that's my story.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Beverly?
Good afternoon, Beverly Kenworthy with the California Apartment Association. We're here today to show clearly that things have really not improved. It's been almost 6 months since the last hearing, and we haven't heard anything. Our members are extremely frustrated. The costs are extremely high. It's affecting their tenants. Service issues are still extremely problematic because of the one-size-fits-all approach does not work for apartment buildings when you have buildings built between 1920 and, more modern current buildings. We just want to know when something's going to happen. When is there going to be some relief? I'm a renter. There are trucks on my street, more trucks on my street now than there ever were. It is like relentless. It just happens to be the same company. They leave the bins out. They block driveways, you can't park. People are really frustrated, and we want to be part of the solution, but we need some direction. And my members have stopped calling because they say to complain because so far it's not worked.
Okay, next speaker, Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Aerosmith. We have a handful of buildings in the Valley, LA area. For 25 years, we've had trash companies picking up our trash where one truck would come, pick up the trash, back out, and leave. Now, after the program was implemented, not only did our general trash rates triple, but now we're getting hit with overage charges, which in one particular building is almost $1,000 a month to drive that last 200 feet. They came all the way across town for one rate, but it cost another $1,000 to go from the gate to our bins. We pay $89.20 a month for somebody to push a button to open the remote to get inside. We have no opportunity to put the bins out in the public alleyways or roadways because that's dangerous for everybody. We have no way of enforcing tenants to separate trash. We have missed pickups. Our fees have tripled and they continue to rise with these overage charges, and it's just too much.
Thank you. I'm going to call David Carmona. Are you here? Joseph Jorgensen? I'm sorry, not Jason. James.
That's okay.
You look like a Jason. No.
Thank you, I guess.
Just kidding.
I'm not going to take it.
Robert Cowart? Robert? Anybody here by that? No Robert in the room? Was that, that you already spoke. Did you fill out another card? Okay, sorry about that. Joseph Riggs? Joseph? So these are the only 3 remaining speakers on item number 1. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on item number 1? Antonia, I'm going to get to you because you filled out more than one card. Sophia? No last name? Did I miss you? I didn't miss you. Sophia, you, item number 1? Yeah, item number 1. Anyone else? Okay, so these are going to be the last 4 speakers on item number 1, and then I'm going to move on to other public speakers. So go ahead, David.
My name's David. I work for Westcom Property Services. We deal with condos. What we've discovered is trash service is inconsistent. Trash haulers have no incentive to work with us. And why should they? They could charge us double the price, and we can't fire them. So if they miss service, if they won't drive their truck onto our property because they make whatever claim they want, they don't need to work with us because there's nothing we can do about it. What I've discovered is my community members could call the trash haulers or any of you guys or anybody for help. They can't get anything done. They can't get money back on their bills for missed service or anything. It takes me emailing all of you guys and LA Times and CBS News and everybody in order to get them to respond, to acknowledge our disputes, and to do anything to work with us. So there's no incentive for them to work with us. I mean, they could do whatever they want, and we discovered that you guys don't have any means to enforce it. And I don't even know if you guys have fined them yet because we call sanitation and they tell us they don't fine.
Thank you. Next speaker, James.
Yeah, hi, my name is James Jorgensen. I'm just an individual homeowner. I'm in a unit that is managed by David, and I've been in close conversation with him for months now as this Recycle LA program has been going on. And all I've seen as a homeowner is multiple times where our trash is not picked up. In fact, I've gone out and seen the Republic truck pull in, dump one of the dumpsters into the truck, and then back out and leave the other one that's full. And in addition to this kind of service where there's missed pickups, partial pickups, in specific numbers, our collection fee has gone from $455 a month to $2,600 a month, a 600% increase. I mean, that's just completely unreasonable. I'm disabled. You know, I have a fixed income. I'm not sure if the council's doing anything about this, but I really hope you are, because I've seen us go from very good service before the implementation of this with a reasonable rate to where we now have very poor service and we're paying an exorbitant amount over what we were previously paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Joseph.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Riggs. I represent Pacific West Management. And one of my buildings, I have 110 units. In that building, I got a 146% increase from $1,200 to $3,000 a month. This does not include the additional access fees, the additional pickup fees for the trucks to come in to haul the trash bins out into the to the streets. Also, as you see, as a picture that I take in one of my trash chutes, this is what the haulers leave behind, because they missed pickups on a weekly basis, and then they charge us for overfillage, and then they do not pick up after what they left behind, which causes a pesticides issue, rodent issues. This is just for one of my buildings. Now, the other building is a 70-unit building, also got a 146% increase, and they have removed our customized trash bins because I only have one trash bin in there. I have to have customized trash bins for both trash bins to fit in there. And this outrageous substandard services that the trash companies are providing is just ridiculous.
Thank you. Sophia?
Hi, I'm Sophia Lawson, and my complaints are actually I manage a property in downtown Los Angeles, and my complaints are very similar to the recent complaints. There's missed service, there's overfills, and there's extra charges for the overfills instead of coming back and completing what they were supposed to do properly. I also have photos as well of the constant overfill of the trashes and the recycling.
Thank you very much. Okay, there are no more speakers on item number 1, so I'm going to go ahead and call multiple card items. Antonia Ramirez and Herman. Both of you filled out cards for all items, including general public comment, so you get a total of 3 minutes. Ms. Ramirez, 2 minutes to discuss all items, and your 1 minute of general public comment.
1 moment, ma'am, 1 moment. Okay, I'm ready. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Public comments.
You're going to start with what? You're going to start with the items?
I'll start with item number 1. Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Why are you using only high-pressured water hoses on the streets of LA when we need to disinfect, fumigate, sanitize, deodorize all the streets in Los Angeles? Presently, we have a health, welfare, and safety crisis. Chinches and bed bugs, scabies epidemic on Main Street, right outside City Hall. Right outside the City Hall, we have a homeless individuals in the surrounding areas who got infected with a whole bunch of bug bites. And I just got word on that a day ago. And I'm worried about them. They're scratching everywhere. So we're asking you now to help treat them first and foremost now. And bleach, don't just use water pressure. There's a wonderful worker, African American, his name is Jamal. He does a wonderful job, but they cannot use bleach or Lysol to disinfect the sidewalks, the planters, the surfaces, the rails, the bathrooms, the steps, the cement blocks. Again, we are in a crisis right now. They need to be treated, and we need to disinfect with Lysol and bleach. Number 4, the personal service contract with Golden Bell products for roach control and all other highly contagious lethal viruses, diseases inside and outside the City Hall, i.e. MRSA, bed bugs, scabies, virulent strains of staph infections, meningitis, SARS, meningitis, encephalitis, TB, hepatitis, polio, leprosy, black plague, and bubonic plague, and kissing diseases all have are contributory factors because there is no hygiene in and outside of City Hall. The mayor, who is a stink bomb, he has failed to clean up the city inside and outside. For example, the cushions at City Hall chambers, if you sit down, you're going to be scratching your butt. Why? Those cushions have never, ever, ever been disinfected or cleaned. They are filthy, and many people told me, you were right. My ass was itching. Yes, they're contaminated with bed bugs. So nothing inside the city has been cleaned or disinfected or fumigated with bleach or Lysol. You need to get rid of the vermin. So tell the mayor and all the council members to not be a tightwad. Disinfect with bleach, Lysol, and sterilize and sanitize all of Los Angeles in and out. Please, don't be a cheap yarmulke pig. And my public comment?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much, ma'am. My public comment. First, before we tackle the energy and climate changes, we must first address the environmental injustices. Public safety. There is no public safety. We have a crime, gang, wetback and drug, trash, and no trash cans epidemic. Our corrupted politicians have failed to serve and protect the middle class, homeless, impoverished, legal law-abiding citizens, and our beloved homeless United States military veterans. Thus, the criminal, diabolical, evil predators think that they are now above the law. So Skid Row niggers have joined forces with the Olvera Street Chango gangs, and together these gangbangers and the wetbacks terrorize, assault, steal, and I still have 40 seconds.
No, you're done.
I had 40 seconds left on my...
We gave you your 3 minutes, and you went into your general public comments. 40 seconds into your general public comments than when you started.
Okay.
But thank you very much for being here.
Much.
Herman,
So let us confirm what the community members have complained about. And it's their fears that pose a direct threat to their safety, to remove all the trash, and to regain from this troubling, unnecessary, unreasonable practice of the city to use trash as a monopoly. Highly discretionary charges, over 600%. Why do we tolerate with these fucking Democrats? Why? They want your vote tonight. They want your vote every time they pass a motion without your approval, and then they don't pick up the fucking trash. We're tired of seeing trash on our fucking streets, Eric Garcetti. And we're tired of looking at this monopoly as a problematic surcharge of hidden fees. So you know I'm right. Not one of you contest me, but that little bitch O'Farrell that ran out because he knows it's coming his way. The community has approved their legislation points that they want their community clean, and they want you to reverse all those surcharges by your crony friends that you, behind closed doors, negotiated terms, practice, and a pattern of corruption. Now my general public comment. Clarence Brandenburg versus Ohio. Not to say that I dislike you. How far will the nigger go? Yeah, that is what we're going to do to the niggers. A dirty nigger. Send the Jews back to Israel. Let's give them back to the dark garden and save fucking America tonight in our votes. Let's go back to constitutional betterment and build the fucking borders and make them strong once again. To improve the quality of our trash collections, we intend to do our part. Give us our state rights, California. Freedom from that fucking Gavin Newsom and his 12% gas surcharges. The same way this city of Democratic assholes have cronyism friends that steal from the public. And once again, Clarence Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969, number 492, argued in the courts, fuck you.
Okay, that concludes our general public comment. Once again, is there anyone else here that wants to speak on item number 1? Okay, so go ahead, Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead and close the public comment section of our meeting. And if there isn't any objection, I'd like to move item number 4 on consent. No objection, that will be the order. And let's go ahead and move on to item number 1.
Certainly, Madam
Department
Chair.
here, go ahead and read that into the record.
Would you also like to consider 2 and 3 with it?
No.
Okay. Item number 1. Verbal presentation discussion for the Bureau of Sanitation relative to the Recycla program updates. You have staff from the Bureau of Sanitation.
Staff. So colleagues, I know you've gotten the emails and the complaints and the phone calls regarding the implementation of Recycla and the contracts that were approved earlier this year. We're 6 months into the program. I thought it'd be a good idea to have an update in terms of where we're at. I do have several questions of you towards the end of your presentation. I'm going to ask all members to hold your questions until they finish the presentation, and then we can into more specific questions, okay? Who wants to start?
Good afternoon. Dan Myers, LA Sanitation, Solid Resources Commercial Franchise Division. Here today to provide an update on the Recycla program. Thought it'd be best and easiest to provide that update as it relates to already a number of the items that this committee has asked us to come back and report on. So the flow of the presentation will mirror a number of the report back items. I'll have a chance to go over and provide a status of where we are with the Recycla program, report back on items concerning service reliability and quality, pricing, customer challenges and disputes, ongoing transitions and the next steps associated with that. Provide a brief update on Councilmember Rue's letter dated February 6th, and another 2 motions that we're also asked to report back on, including the China impacts on recycling and city service of mobile homes. To start with, just a quick update on where we are with Recycla. The slide shows a number of different metrics that we've prepared. Currently, we're servicing over 65,000 customers under Recycla. The collection efficiencies under Recycla exceed 99.9% efficiency. And to date, we've been able to rescue 1,600 tons of food waste that actually has gone to feed those in need. The rest of these I'll actually get into more details as we go through the slides. Slide number 4, service reliability and quality. During transition, there were a number of a number of questions arose about the excessive number of miscollections that occurred during transition. I'm happy to report that from December, where we peaked out at over 6,000 complaints in for miscollections, we're down to just over 300 miscollection calls in September. Again, this represents a collection efficiency of over 99.9%. In comparison, LA San also operates a collection program. Our collection efficiency is about 99.9%. And I'll get into more details, but we've also provided a dashboard that will be extending out to all the council offices that detail out miscollections, but I'll get into the details of the dashboard in a later slide.
And when is that? When are you going to make that available to all council offices?
We can start as early as this week, providing training and the dashboard. The dashboard's been developed. We just want to make sure the council offices are trained on how to pull it up and use it and search through it. But I'll have a sample of what that dashboard looks like. This graphically just shows miscollections as we have progressed through this program. Obviously, during the implementation phase, we're transitioning in customers. We did experience an excessive number of miscollections. That has dropped down every single month since that transition ended in February. Slide number 6, service reliability and quality. LA San was asked to report back on the efforts that are made by the RSPs. RSPs are recyclist service providers to educate our customers. The RSPs provide LA San the following information on a monthly basis: the number of waste assessments performed, the community events and planned events, community events that are planned and attended, different mailers that are sent out to their customers, the various other types of outreach education material prepared for the program, and any updates made to their web pages or social media. Slide 7, service reliability and quality. LA San was asked to report back on any instances where LA San had to provide service to a recycler customer. Since the end of transition in February, LA San has not had to step in and provide service to any customer receiving service from a recycler service provider. Slide number 8. LA San was asked to report back on whether the actual number of customers in recycler were more than expected, and if the actual number of customers would have an effect on the original performance that were used to develop and negotiate maximum rates. The number of known customers listed in the RFP were 63,459. It's important to note that this number was a self-reported number. We received that from all of our permitted waste haulers at the time. They reported that to us on an annual basis. We anticipated that this was at best an estimate, and that number would change as we rolled through the program. After the dust had settled on implementation, the number of customers in the recycler program, as reported right now, is 65,565. The slides have a couple graphs that show how those differences play out in each of the different recycler zones. At this time, based upon the number of customers anticipated and the actual number of customers, do not believe any adjustments are warranted based on the number of customers. Slide number 9, pricing. LA San was asked to report back on the impacts of the RSO and affordable housing developments and the development of an alternative rate structure. An alternative rate structure would require that the recycler contracts be amended. The negotiated maximum rates are set in contract and are applicable to all customers. LA San has attempted to assist affordable housing customers. We did take the opportunity to meet with the Southern California Association of Nonprofit Housing and some of their members, reached out to a number of their members and offered to perform waste assessments to see if there's any, those waste assessments performed by LA Sand staff, to see if there's ways and opportunities to lower their bills and reduce their impacts. We were able to go out to 45 different properties, which did result in a number of those actually reducing their rates. As far as the question has come up is the ability to pass on rates or the limited ability to pass on rates. LA Sand understands that RSO properties can request for additional compensation under the Just and Reasonable Rent Adjustment Commission guidelines. These guidelines provide information on the program and the procedures to follow by the department in processing a just and reasonable rent increase. Slide number 10, pricing. LA Sand was asked to report back on the feasibility of bin sharing. As we looked into this option, we found that the concept and the practice of bin sharing occurs right now. For example, there are strip malls where businesses share a common service. What's unique about these businesses is that they share an adjacency. They share a single responsible party for payment and arrangement of those services, and that the single party and the RSP agree upon what those service agreements are. And then the businesses are party to a mutual agreement to secure those services. We believe this concept can be extended to other businesses where applicable, and that RSPs can work with their customers on a case-by-case basis on the applicability of bin sharing. Further, LA Sand will work with the RSPs on the development of administrative procedures to support that. Slide number 11, pricing. LA Sand was asked to report back on graffiti removal of bins placed in vulnerable locations. The RSPs are required to remove graffiti up to 3 times within a 12-month period for each customer. Upon the request for graffiti removal, the RSP must remove that graffiti within five business days. LA Sand did contemplate that there would be areas where the exposure would be greater than just 3 times. As part of the contractual requirement, the RSPs also have the ability or the requirement to provide businesses with paint that they can also paint their bins and remove graffiti and improve the aesthetics. Item number 12, page 12, customer challenges and disputes. LA Sand was asked to ensure that RSPs are capable to communicate with customers in their preferred method of communications. RSPs currently have the ability to contact customers, and they do contact customers by both via email and telephone. Slide number 13, customer challenges and disputes. LA Sand was to report on the number of report on the customer dispute process and establish an ombudsperson or ambassador to assist customers. Effective December 2017, LA Sand established a dispute resolution process wherein LA Sand could intervene and review unresolved cases. LA Sand further worked and established an official billing dispute resolution unit. Currently, that unit exists and acts as an ombudsperson to customers, and we review all pending disputes that we receive through our LA Sand Customer Care Center. Slide 14, customer challenges and disputes. LA Sand was asked to establish a working group specifically with multifamily groups to address the logistics issues and challenges for multifamily residential properties. LA San has already established a green ribbon committee that works with various business organizations throughout the city. What we will be doing is expanding that green ribbon committee to establish subcommittees consisting of specific business groups, including multifamily residential properties, to address their questions and concerns. Slide 15, customer challenges and disputes. LA San was asked to provide guidance to all customers on the placements of bins and right-of-ways. LA San inspection staff currently works with businesses that permanently place bins in public right-of-ways and sidewalks. If a bin is left out or impedes the sidewalk or public right-of-way, there is a process in place where those bins are subject to fines or confiscation to ensure the right-of-way is cleared. Slide 16, ongoing transition and next steps. LA San was asked to report on the number of new and additional accounts and if additional resources were needed to service those customers. I touched on this already in an earlier slide. The number of customers in the Recycla program now closely mirror the number of anticipated customers. We don't believe that there's any additional resources required through the Recycla program to service these customers. Slide 17, ongoing transitions and next steps. LA San was also asked to break down customer billing by extra service charges and by customer type. Shown here is a breakdown of the total billing for commercial customers for October 2018. This shows the monthly base rate as well as access and distance charges, further broken between black bins and blue bins. As you can see, 13% of the customers are charged black bin access fees, and that comprises 2% of their bills, as an example of this breakdown. On slide 18, it's a similar slide, but it represents multifamily customers. As you can see on this slide, 30% of multifamily customers are charged black bin access fees that also comprise 2% of their bills. Slide 19, ongoing transitions and next steps. LA San was asked to report back on the progress made towards addressing the concerns of the equestrian communities. Important to note that the equestrian community is serviced by either LA San or RSPs. There's a mix of services that are offered there. For the RSP service properties, the RSPs have worked with their equestrian customers in order to evaluate how best to provide service and meet their specific waste handling needs beyond the standard waste pickup offered under the Recycla program. As a result, they have found a number of ways to meet the needs and the concerns of this community. Slide 20, almost done. Slide 20, ongoing transitions and next steps. LA San was asked to report back on the actions taken to ensure compliance with the contract and imposition of liquidated damages. LA San has and continues to ensure compliance with the terms of all the contracts. LA San's primary focus has been around the provision of service to customers. Since February 2018, LA San has issued liquidated damages to the Recycla service providers that did not complete miscollections in accordance with the contract terms. LA San has received liquidated damage payments to date in excess of $25,000. As service has improved, LA San will be moving its focus to other contractual terms such as container replacement, container repair, graffiti removal, and bin cleaning. Slide 21, ongoing transitions and next steps. LA Sand was asked to develop a tenant-based on-site education program. To date, there has been almost 35,000 education and outreach site visits to customers. We've held 512 community events, reaching out to over 24,000 customers. There's been nearly 180,000 direct mailers or emails regarding Recycla outreach and education sent by our Recycla service providers. We've also ran a series of community newspaper publications advertising the awareness of recycling. Slide 22. LA Sand was asked to develop an environmental dashboard, and I spoke of this earlier. If you go to the next slide, the next slide actually gives details on what that dashboard would look like. It gives a number of clean fuel vehicles that are utilizing the system, the greenhouse gas reduction associated with the utilization of clean fuel trucks versus the diesel trucks that they replaced, the tons of blue bins recyclables collected, tons of organic waste collected, and tons of food waste rescued, as well as the number of missed collections per month. LA Sand was, slide 24. LA Sand was asked to work with the Bureau of Street Services to ensure coordination with the Recycla curbside bin removal with street cleaning schedules. The Bureau of Street Services currently has over 800 different street sweeping routes throughout the city.
Hold on for just a second. We're having disruptions by Mr. Spindler, who just walked in and started to make goat noises. Now you've got Herman back there egging him on. This is your first and final warning. Continue. You're done. Mr. Sergeant, can you please show Mr. Herman out the door, please? As soon as your friend showed up, you needed to start. You just can't even help yourself. You're done. Goodbye. Well, our public comment period has expired. There is no more public comment. Thank you very much.
It doesn't have
No, you're not. Thank you very much. You're interrupting our presentation. Sergeant, can you please show Mr. Spindler the door, please? He's disrupting our meeting. He showed up an hour late. We are no longer taking public comment on any of the items. Thank you very much, Spindler. Sorry about that.
Have a nice day, Wayne.
Goodbye. Yeah, goodbye, Mr. Spindler. Members, by the way, they know the rules. We started public comment at the beginning of our meeting, and we closed public comment shortly thereafter, so we've made our requirement. But go ahead. Sorry about that.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
We have a lot of visitors in the room today, and I just wanted to take a moment to, on behalf of every right-thinking person, to apologize to everyone who's here for the racist, misogynistic, disruptive nonsense that we hear from those two individuals at every single meeting. So for everyone here who's offended by that, which is all of us, please forgive us for having to tolerate that and expose you to that as well.
You on page 24?
Yes, page 24. The Bureau was asked to work with Street Services to see if there's ways to coordinate the collection of the Recycla bins with street sweeping. What we found is that, there's over 800 different street sweeping routes. And the street sweeping routes are broken into short increments, typically 2-hour increments over the week, typically Monday through Friday, some Saturday collection, street sweeping. And really the the methodology of the street sweeping and the recycla, very difficult to mirror those two together. But we have worked with street services, and we've spoken with them. And they did said if there are areas of specific concern, that LA Sand can work with them, along with our recycler service providers, to see if there's a way to better align street sweeping in certain areas that are of the greatest concern. Some of the additional items from Councilmember Rue's letter dated February 6th. LA Sand was asked to provide an assessment of the long-term viability and cost stability of the program. Specific around if markets change, how does that affect the viability of the program? The program was designed with long-term stability and viability built into it. The rates and any future rate adjustments take those into consideration to ensure the program's longevity and to get us through the end of the contract term. China's impact on recycling. The impact of China's ban on the import of a number or most of recyclable materials has resonated actually throughout the entire nation, and has made recycling, quite frankly, more difficult. But through the Recycla program, our service providers continue to collect blue bin material. The RSPs, just as well as any other waste collector or recycler in the nation, have felt the impacts of the ban and are paying more to process recyclables. LA Sand works very closely with them to track and make sure that the blue bin material collected is continuing to be recycled. We receive reports on blue bin material collected every month. With our facility certification program, which I'll touch on in just a minute, we'll be able to work very closely with the facilities and know exactly what material is being recycled and where it's going. Again, all to the goal to ensure that markets are available to ensure the long-term viability of the program for recycling. Slide 27, city service of mobile homes. LA Sand was asked to report back on the feasibility of exempting mobile home parks from the Recycla program and resuming residential service of mobile home parks. Some mobile home parks are serviced right now by LA Sand. Others are serviced by our Recycla service providers. LA Sand does have the capability of providing service to all mobile homes properties. What we found is working with the mobile homes, some of them actually prefer to stay with Recycla service providers, the service model they offer, for if a mobile home desires or wishes to come to city service, they have the opportunity to present that request to LA Sand, and LA Sand will review those on a case-by-case basis. Last two. I want to briefly touch on our facility certification program, a program that LA Sand is very excited about moving forward and implementing. Wanted to just briefly touch on the goals of the program. The goals of the program are to provide a health and safe working condition for our facility workers, reduce the impacts of public health and the environment to surrounding environmental justice communities, to provide a voice to the workers and the communities to report unsafe conditions, and to assist LA Sand in meeting its zero waste goals. Some of the components that are in our facility certification program are mandatory site inspections, the requirement to remain compliant with all of their a facility's regulatory permits, additional health and safety review and requirements, a number of new operational controls, facility enclosure for certain types of facilities, our ability to inspect records. The facilities need to provide LA-SAN with detailed monthly reports on the material that they receive and recycle, as well as detailed waste characterizations that will assist us in determining what material is being diverted from the landfill. And that completes my presentation.
Well, thank you very much. So while we still have a lot of work to do on Recicla, overall, I think that the fundamental issue of missed collections have improved, and so I have to give you that much. In your presentation, you did mention that there's discussions that still need to be had between very specific business groups and multifamily property owners. I need you to do that as soon as possible. I need you to spearhead those meetings and those discussions, because I am aware that some of these business groups have been waiting for that. So I think we need to move that as soon as possible. And the last thing I want to mention before I ask the members to weigh in is the facility certification process is very critical to me. And so, as you well know, earlier today in council, we moved action to further review this program in committee. So I look forward to that conversation at our next meeting in 2 weeks. Okay. Members, any questions? Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the presentation to the department. And thank you for everyone who has concerns from the public to bring them in and voice those legitimate concerns that you have. I have just a few questions in relation to some of the public comment that I heard, and then a few questions related to the report. I'll start with the public comment. Can you clarify the whole 4 and under question, the 4 units and under question, and why do you think there's still a misunderstanding there?
Good afternoon. Alex Halou, LA Sanitation. The existing ordinance has sanitation responsible for single-family homes and 40 units or less, where we provide direct collection services. So I'm not sure what the confusion is, because if people who have 40 units or less ask to join sanitation, we have been adding them into the sanitation fold. While we oversee these...
I'm sorry. One individual who gave comment mentioned that she was told 2 conflicting things when she called and asked that question. So there should, from your perspective, there should be no question at all, and if they contact your office, they'll get the clear answer.
Exactly. Once they call LA Sanitation, they send us, because LA Sanitation we charge under the DWP bill, so we ask them that they will be agreeing that their bill, they'll see sanitation charge on the next DWP bill. And so as long as they agree to that process, we usually add them into sanitation.
All right. And I hope that the person who made the comment will interact with sanitation professionals right now, and they can help case manage. This was an anecdotal comment, but this one really I took notice of, because one of the main goals of Recicla was to reduce air pollution and reduce wear and tear on our streets, and it had a very strong environmental thrust. What do you say when someone says there are more trucks on the streets than ever, especially if it's from one company? What do you think that's about?
You know, I cannot directly address a comment of there's more trucks on the street. There wasn't an analysis of a street by street a number of trucks on each of those streets. I can tell you that there's a couple of fundamental things when we did our analysis let me go back. One of the things that we did do through this program is we did implement a 2-bin system, a system where you have you're collecting black bins and you're collecting blue bins. And And that system is necessary. That system is necessary to make sure and ensure that businesses have the opportunity to comply with state requirements and their standards.
And obviously, it takes two different trucks. To do that.
And that takes two different trucks. We'll eventually be adding in organic waste to that also. Again, in response to being able to for businesses to comply with state standards. So there might be instances where those two trucks were more than what happened on that street before.
Let me ask you this. I know what you're saying, and that's pretty clear, but if perhaps it's a one-off or perhaps it's an incident that is not that common, but wouldn't it be possible if someone calls and says, hey, for some reason I'm seeing 10 Athens trucks a day, and that's more trucks on my street than I've ever seen, just for example. Couldn't they then just log for you the times that they're witnessing that and then work with you in terms of addressing why the nature of the pickups on their street is as it is?
Well, certainly. I mean, all of our service providers have detailed routing, and they can actually provide, as soon as I know what street that's on, they can provide routing of what trucks are routed on that street and why.
They can provide those service logs.
If
Some
we
of it
can
might
add-
have to do with missed pickups and extra charges. Yes, you were.
I'm sorry, Councilman. Prior to the initiation of the program, we did a detailed environmental impact report, a CEQA document, that looked at all what the existing trucks operating and what the emissions. We have to remember, a lot of these trucks were diesel-powered engine. So with the moving of Recycla, the 459 vehicles you saw, all these are low-emission, zero-emission CNG or LNG vehicles. So the emission is lower. Also, in our February 2018 presentation at the board, presentation here,
yes,
we showed the routing, how it was before, where you could see all the trucks crisscrossing the entire waste shed, and how it's advantageous to the RSPs to do a more efficient routing. And we have demonstrated, unfortunately we don't have the slide with us, a complete reduction, over 60% of saving on fuel as well as routing in that north central district that we showed. So there's a lot of savings for the RSP by reducing number of vehicles. We did increase recycling, which a lot of the multifamily did not have, a lot of businesses did not have.
Okay. And so since the universe of complaints is shrinking significantly according to your report, wouldn't it then, by definition, be easier to deal case by case with these remaining complaints that many of them you heard today?
Absolutely, and I think, I'm not speaking for Athens, but I know they have a GPS on their vehicles, and we could see the routing. And so all these, we could be tracking them for us, and we'll be able to show where these vehicles are operating.
And something else that someone who mentioned, confusion over just the numbers. A commenter mentioned that she calls sanitation, and she's getting bounced back and forth, and there's confusion on the numbers. So that's just something that you heard. I heard it too. And I think that's a real issue if people are confused about the basic approach of just getting assistance when they're confused or upset about their bill because they think it's unfair. So that should probably be addressed or maybe publicized better. Madam Chair, if I may just really quickly, one of the questions I had in terms of RSO properties can request for additional compensation under the just and reasonable rent adjustment guidelines, commission guidelines. How many requests have you had for that?
I do not know. That's yeah. Those requests do not come through LA San. When we called and we worked with the housing department over this, and we asked them what options there are, this was described to us as an option for an RSO property to seek release for an increase.
Handled through HSID then.
What's that?
Handled through housing.
Handled through housing.
Okay. And then lastly, you mentioned in the report, official building dispute resolution unit currently exists that has an ombudsperson. How big is that caseload, approximately?
That caseload is, we currently have about 2,000 or 3,000 cases that are currently under review right now.
Okay. And how does that compare with February, for example, of earlier this year?
Well, that caseload the caseloads have grown. There is a backlog right now in that, and that's what I was speaking to. The number of dispute calls coming in has decreased on a monthly basis significantly from February. I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I
But it's
apologize.
significantly decreased.
Yeah.
And, okay, so as far as the backlog, when do you think you'll get to the end of the backlog?
We're actually hoping to be able to clear the backlog within the next month or so, to get all of the back cases out, and then just stay up with the current calls that come in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me say first that it seems clear from this that a lot of the transitional problems that happened are starting to be dealt with. I think we're still hearing a lot of concerns from the public about problems that are fundamental to the flaws in the policy that have nothing to do with transition. Exclusivity leads to higher prices. And, you know, Mr. O'Farrell talked about truck trip reduction. This policy was never going to reduce the number of truck trips because there's so much waste that the public has to be disposed of, and you can only fit that in so many trucks. So there's no way to change that algorithm. So, sorry, I don't want to start my rants again on the same topics that I've ranted about so many times, so forgive me, but they are cleaner. The trucks are cleaner, but we're not going to reduce the number of truck trips because we have the same amount of trash to haul. So unless we have MRFs in every single council district in the city, and the trucks are stationed there and they deposit their waste there, which we do not have and we will not have, we're never going to reduce the number of truck trips. So anyway, I don't want to get started on that again. I want to ask you about two areas specifically. One is complaints and the other is diversion goals. So in terms of complaints, we heard a number of the members of the public say that they've kind of stopped complaining because I think some of these issues are fundamental to the policy. So what are we doing to encourage, affirmatively encourage engagement with the public and dispute resolution rather than passively waiting for them to come in? Because my office has received a lot fewer complaints too, but I think that there's still a lot of people who are out there seething who just aren't complaining anymore. So what are we doing to try to help them? And specifically, one of the areas during the transition that was a problem was with the waste assessment not having been done. And people were being asked to put out different kinds of bins and so on without a proper waste assessment being done. I do see here that the number of waste assessments that have been done now exceed the number of monthly accounts serviced. I'm not sure how that can be. I'd like to understand that better. And then does that suggest that we have finished a waste assessment on every single customer in the city and then some? And if so, what are we doing then to continue to try to resolve customers' concerns, reduce their costs, fix the service complaints, and so forth?
So I'll take care of some of the easy ones first. The number of waste assessments exceed the number of customers because there's been times where they've gone back and done multiple waste assessments at a single property. To answer the fundamental question is that the concept of waste assessments needs to occur continually throughout the program.
Okay.
If you look at right now the tons of recyclables that are collected through the program, that needs to increase significantly. It needs to increase by not only participation in the blue bin program, we need to increase the number of blue bins. The blue bins, we need to get to a point where that exceeds our number of black bins. So from a fundamental point that the engagement with the customers is never going to cease throughout the term of the contract. The contract actually requires that at minimum, every 2 years, the RSP is required to redo a waste assessment. So at minimum, whether or not the customer requests it, the RSPs need to get back and do a waste assessment.
Okay.
So that's contractual. And that is something we track. That's why we continue to track waste assessments performed and track those at a customer level to see and make sure those waste assessments are performed throughout the term of the contract.
Okay. So on page 13 of the handout, you mentioned the billing dispute resolution unit. Responded to Mr. O'Farrell's questions about that as well. So I guess what I would like to see, and I don't expect it right now, but maybe when we come back for our next round of reports on this, I'd like to know what the outcome of those billing disputes has been. So it's great that we have a unit and that we're acting as an ombudsperson, but maybe we can get a breakdown of what the types of complaints are and what their outcomes were, how you resolved those problems, even broken down by hauler, so that we can see where do we continue to have a problem actor, how cooperative are they at fixing those problems, and what is sanitation doing, about it. That can come in our next round of reports back. Along those lines, the hammer that we have a couple of hammers, but one of the hammers is fining the haulers. And you mentioned that there were $25,000 in fines so far against haulers. Did I get that right?
Paid.
Paid, okay. So now do I also gather that, am I reading this correctly, that the revenues received by those haulers so far is $436 million?
That is correct. Let me go back to that page.
So I tried to figure out what percentage of 436 million, 25,000 is, and I got an error message on my calculator because it was such an infinitesimally small number. So I would like to see, when we have recurrent patterns of complaints, unless we have a robust process of letting these folks know that they are going to pay if they are causing problems for our customers, we're never going to get the cooperation from them that we need. So, sorry, Madam Chair, I've got so much to do. I don't want to hog the time. I have another area about diversion goals. Do you want me to come back to that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the fundamental point of this policy, among clean air was one of them, but another one was meeting state mandated diversion goals, as you had mentioned, and you talked about getting more blue bins than black bins. But the challenge that we face now is that, and especially with multifamily customers, as you heard a number of folks say, they're not locking the bins because they're having to pay more money to lock the bins. They're having to add that cost and then add the monthly payment to the hauler to unlock the bins, which means they have no control over what goes in there and what's stolen from there. So on the one hand, you have people, homeless people, random people in the alley, people contaminating the recyclables with throwing whatever in there. And then on the other hand, you have people stealing the recyclables from the blue bins, to go make money off of. So I guess, and then the third part of that is what we've just discussed with China. What percentage of the waste stream right now in the blue bins is plastic by volume?
Oh, Councilmember, I'm sorry, I do not know that number off the
Enrique, do you know that offhand? About 18%. So almost, 1 cubic foot out of 5 is plastic, which is no longer effectively recyclable because China and now Vietnam have shut off the marketplace for recyclables. So that's going in the landfill now, isn't it?
So right now, the markets are are limited. And if the markets stay as limited as they are, as our program grows in the collection of recyclables, that will become problematic. Have not seen that any of the material collected and pulled out of the blue bin currently is actually being disposed of. It is still being recycled. They are still finding markets for that material.
Okay.
It does pose a long-term concern. We do need to find markets, preferably local markets, to recycle that material.
Just ask our general manager Enrique Saldivar to come and answer some of these questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman Kokorian, the markets, as Dan indicated, has affected us here as well as across the country, but definitely the West Coast. We, in more ways than one, are subject to the trade relationship with China, whether it's a true effect on the contamination issue that China expressed was the reason for their banning, or whether it's part of the trade wars going on. I want to believe that it's the latter. In the meantime, over the last 10 plus years, we had grown very complacent with China always being there for this kind of industry. We can no longer afford that. We can no longer only rely on China. Whether they restore and reopen the markets, which everybody's saying they will, we are developing alternative markets. And we believe that the logistics that made China a great destination for our recyclables can also play out in the North American trading bloc. And so now we're working within that bloc, North America, starting with Baja California. Appreciate the efforts of the chair's office and the mayor's office. We began a partnership in earnest with the state of Baja and the city of Ensenada, where we can begin at least with fiber, meaning paper and cardboard, as a beginning, and try to develop alternative markets outside of China and outside of the Far East. So that's efforts, alternative ways in which we are looking for the mid and long term, including even in the short term.
Okay, thank you. And I think we're going to be discussing that more on the other agenda item. But in the meantime, what can we do for folks who don't want to face this expense of locking? Is there some strategy that we can have to decrease the spoilage level while not imposing additional unnecessary costs, I guess would be the main question here.
We're working on being able to remove all the barriers to recycling, and so I think we will be coming back to you soon with some of those ideas.
Okay, terrific. Last two things for now, and then I can come back later. Who sits on the Green Ribbon Commissions, and are there representatives of the business community and the multifamily housing industry?
So it's all of that, the business associations, the advocacy associations, some of the tenant associations.
Okay, great.
Certainly all of the representatives.
Great. And then lastly, I was confused on the mobile home service issue, why there would be some mobile home parks that are serviced by LA San and some that are participating in recycling. How did it come about that those weren't all encompassed or not encompassed in the exclusivity of the contracts?
We took a snapshot of what existed prior to the changeover, and recognizing that snapshot was going to discover what could be some irregularities, or meaning things that existed prior that would not necessarily conform to how it should be. And so we have offered, just like the apartments that are 4 units or less, who may have been under private service but could be under our service, we're inviting them to come to sanitation as they prefer to come over. Same thing for the mobile home parks. Some of them, either because of tradition or for whatever reason over the years, had used a private hauler.
Okay, I see. So the Recicla program does not encompass single family, obviously. It doesn't encompass 4 units or lower multifamily, and it also does not encompass mobile home parks, but some of them chose to have a private hauler regardless.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know complaints are way down everywhere, but we still get them. So I wanted to read an email from one of my constituents, which I think is pretty typical of how people feel. The gate fee remains a sore point with me, almost $89.20 per month to push a button operating the electric gate. I don't know what can be done about this gate fee, but it's a very disproportionate amount of money for a very minor service. He also says, generally speaking, I appreciate the intended purpose of this franchise program. However, I remain deeply embittered by the manner in which it was implemented and the unjustifiable fees and rate increases providers are allowed to charge. So I think part of the problem is impossible to deal with. People are angry at the terrible rollout that we had. We obviously can't go back into the past and undo that. How are we doing in our discussions with haulers about addressing some of the incredibly high fees for minor services?
That was included in the contract terms negotiations, settlement discussions that have been going on, and we have largely wrapped up the discussions at our level, at the department level. Soon, the terms of that settlement agreement will be coming to you for your approval. And I think I can say with the city attorney here, what else can I say?
The city attorney just cautions that any settlement of any litigation or threatened litigation would be a closed session item most likely, and since that's not agendized here.
But so that is coming to us soon. We'll discuss more.
I guess I cannot take back what I said.
Also, it's interesting to note in this report that as recently as January, we had 5,500 missed collections, but at the moment where liquidated damages went into effect in February, plus a hearing where we were talking about things like possibly getting out of contracts with the worst vendors, mysteriously we went from 5,500 to under 2,000 in 1 month. So to me, that tells me that the haulers could have dropped that more dramatically all along, but when they actually were going to be taken to task for it, they mysteriously cut it by over 2/3, which is really remarkable. Just wanted to point that out. I don't have a question about it. Also, I actually would have a high expectation that our truck travel mileage would have been dropped dramatically, because we went from dozens and dozens of different haulers crisscrossing each area to pick up one customer here and one customer there, to a zone in which only one company was handling it. So I don't know if we have the kind of detailed analysis that we would like on that, but we should have that, because in theory, with the change from 1 to 1 from dozens, maybe 100 in some areas, we should see a dramatic drop in truck mileage, even if we have added recycling. So I don't know how much information we have on that now, or how much work we need to do that analysis.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was going to say is we get detailed information on the truck miles traveled currently from every single one of our service providers, every route, every day. What we don't have is that same type of detail before Recycla existed. So we can't provide detailed vehicle miles traveled under the current system. We just don't have the ability, because there was no way to gather that information on a definitive basis like we would have now before Recycla started.
Well, that's unfortunate, because part of why this program was created was to reduce the number of miles. So if we have no way to validate whether that happened or not, that's pretty unfortunate.
The environmental documentation went into details, but what it did is it compared under a system. It was done as a comparative system, not on the actuals, because we didn't have actuals obviously when Recicla would come into play, or actuals of when the system was in play.
We should be able to, and we will. Councilman Krikorian is right. The tonnage doesn't change for the most part. Waste minimization will reduce the tonnage, but let's assume it doesn't. Let's assume there is no waste reduction and waste minimization, and it's the same tonnage. So it's the same tonnage going in different trucks. We ought to be able to quantify with some theoretical approach if we were not collecting it separately, if we had the same tonnage and the same one truck collecting it all under the pre-Recicla and the post-Recicla model, and be able to show how the miles would reduce. We ought to be able to do that, and I know Councilman Krikorian and you have been asking us to do exactly that. So let us do that. We will be able to, we may end up having to use some theoretical assumptions, because clearly we don't have all the same streams anymore. We have 3 streams as opposed to the single stream that was in the past. Now we have the residual waste, we have the recyclable waste, and we have the organics or the green waste. So 3 different streams. But let us make an attempt at the theoretical and some way of showing the reduction.
And presumably, even if we had created a different, more competitive system, we still would have required a recycling process and additional separate bins and separate trips for that anyway.
Yeah, we didn't, I mean, obviously it's required that we separate, or that we don't dispose of things that would have gone into the landfill before. I mean, that goes not only with our ethic, but it goes with the state requirements.
So if we were making that comparison, I think we should extrapolate what we would have been doing with the system had we not created this system and just added recycling processes to it. Because we would have had to do that one way or the other, and we shouldn't be counting that against one and not against the other, since we would have had to implement it one way or the other.
I mean, also like pre-Recicla, they were putting recyclables in with the trash. And so with a lot of contamination when they separate them at the dirty material recovery facility, with China putting 0.5%, as well you have Malaysia, Southeast Asia countries, they're not accepting those materials anymore unless they reach less than 0.5% contamination. So segregating the material at the source is the best option. Also, that now it's easier for the MRF as they go through the process and they take these recyclables. I mean, so China was sending inspectors to our material recovery facility on the residential side to check the material, and they put label on them that this be acceptable in China. If it's contaminated over 0.5%, that material could not be shipped. So it is crucial to separate at the source, not commingle the material also.
Okay, and another subject, the smaller vehicles with the forklifts that go into the buildings and bring out the trash, are those zero emission, or do we have any requirements on those yet?
Interesting, and I'll say this anecdotally because I know exactly they call Stinger trucks. Mm-hmm. I want to say they're gasoline, but I don't think they're CNG.
No, they're mostly are gasoline.
Gasoline, they're literally just a pickup truck. But that doesn't mean we cannot have them moved. They were not included in the requirement that they be converted to clean fuel.
So hopefully we can look at that. I know there are companies in Southern California that seem to be building just about everything in a clean fuel version. So even if we have to sort of create the market for that, I think we should be looking at doing that. Also, just for the general public, I wonder if we've implemented quality control systems since we had our difficult rollout that the public should know about.
Yes, definitely the dashboard that Dan, I don't think we have made mention of the fact that we have a 24/7 customer care center any time of the day, 7 days a week. Whereas before, if someone were trying to get a hold of a company, RSP or hauler in the past, if it was only 9 to 5 or what have you, now it's 24/7. So that's every request, whether it's for information or whether it's for service, is tracked to completion and reported on. So that's part of what will be on the dashboard that we will be rolling out, Madam Chair, later this week and next week. All of that is now fully transparent, shared with the RSPs. We are on the same database, sharing what we see, they see, and vice versa.
Okay, and I'm still getting complaints about bins being left in the streets for long periods of time, and also for people being charged, even if their bin is a hair above closed, which I think is a problem, especially now with Amazon boxes coming in such high volumes and residents not being aware of the need to squash those so they can make more room. So I'm wondering, one, if we've thought about the Amazon box problem itself and looked at trying to do some education about the need to break down your boxes, and two, if we've looked at these issues and taken them up with the haulers. 'Cause I don't know that if someone has an inch of opening on their bin, that we really should be allowing them to charge extra for it.
I think we should speak more publicly about the fact that we have a whole group of ambassadors in the field. On the one hand, they're inspectors to check on quality control and customer and RSP disputes, but also they're there as an ambassador for helping with information and on tips such as that. So we do some of it proactively right now, but we can definitely do that with our ambassadors.
And working with the vendors in terms of being pretty gleeful about charging extra for a tiny gap in the top of closure. Is there a way for us to try to appeal to them to be a little more reasonable on that as well? As far as recycling, have we looked at trying to create more markets, both by, in terms of the actual recycling, by looking at siting a facility somewhere in Southern California ourselves for either paper or plastic recycling, and looking at whether we can create our own markets, especially for paper? We could attempt to have all of local governments, local state offices, whatever offices we have in Southern California, buy locally recycled paper if we were able to set up some sort of a local mill or such.
We can, and we have been encouraged by the return of some of the paper mills that had left Southern California many years ago. There's only one remaining paper mill out east, owned by International Paper. But you're absolutely right. We have to be tied to the logistics world of commerce. Amazon's a great example. They need cardboard. The boxes will be going to a customer. We have to intercept those logistics lines of flow. Why we're looking at Baja as an example, but it can also be here in California, is that so much manufacturing that happens in Baja, in the border region. So boxes leave. They need boxes. They need a lot of the stuff that we produce. And believe it or not, they also have recycled water available for paper mills. So those synergies are playing themselves out. We will intercept the logistics and the movement of goods in a way that we are not now having to build a paper mill someplace where we have to ship everything. So I think those same criteria can favor Southern California again for paper mills to be here.
Okay, and one last question. Following up on what we're looking at with mobile homes, I wonder if we could get a report back on the potential impacts of creating an ordinance to also carve out nonprofits and low-income housing.
Can we get that? That's the items number 2 and 3. So if we can hold off on any additions to those items, I'd appreciate it. You can make those recommendations when we get to those items, okay?
Fair.
It's item number 2 that you're referring to. Does that conclude your questions, Mr. Koretz? Okay, Mr. Cedillo?
I don't want to be out of order, but
Well, I'm sure you
what
are.
you just said, of course I would be, but it just seems inconsistent with right here, page 9, where it talks about a report with recommendations to develop alternative rate structures, exemptions, otherwise mitigate any financial or operational effects, ... Your report indicates that you had 45 inspections and that it resulted in a service level modification of 10 accounts. Let me give you an anecdote in my district. There's a senior housing and affordable housing project in Chinatown. It's called Met Lofts. 123 units with 300 tenants, and they had a rate increase. These are fixed income seniors, probably median age 75, many of them 85, older. Very fixed incomes. Had a rate increase that the developer had to pass through to the tenants, and it was due to the increased costs. There is no flexibility there for these seniors and for the developer, because it's a low-income development project. Everything is set. So I'm just wondering how you fared in these 45 inspections, what was your impetus, what was your motivation to go look at these sites, what were it says here, resulting in potential service level modification of 10 accounts. How do we get to the point where we're reducing or changing the cost structure for those units? There's no flexibility. On the RSOs, I read a report that were 68% of the housing stock in the city is RSO, so it's a different scenario. And I think there's a real distinction between RSOs per se and affordable housing units that are designed, let's say, for seniors or veterans or disabled. Clearly, at this moment in the city's life, with the low wage, high rent costs, the tenants paying the extraordinary amounts that they are, Prop 10, et cetera, in this real context, I just think we're compelled to revisit this entire program, or at least how it affects these tenants.
Well, Councilman, always expect us, and this is what we're doing right now, on things that are within our control and things that we can affect at the department level, and being able to work with a customer, senior housing as an example, by doing an audit of how their service agreement stands right now with the RSP. First, whether we believe we can, by doing waste assessments and working with both the manager or whomever runs the building, in ways in which they can reduce their subscription to black container service and move some of it to blue service. That is all within our power and within our authority and within our obligation, frankly. So that's what we have been doing in all of these, or as many as we have been able to do, and more. Anything that rises to a policy level and consideration, that's obviously something we would bring to you if any structural changes on anything outside of what is within our power. And changing the rate structure would require exactly that if it was going to be any kind of different approach. I know.
So let me interrupt you. So Mr. Krikorian says, look, there's a set amount of trash. There's a margin or a degree for which we can maybe reduce that, but there's a set amount. Now, one building is not RSO, or one building is RSO, and then one building is fixed income. At the fixed income level, what are the factors before you come and say, we need to relook at the rate structure here for these specific RSOs and these nonprofit developments, et cetera.
A good example has been these boxes. More and more people have stuff delivered to their units, seniors or not, via online ordering, and which means things come in a box. And so they'll end up with a bunch of little boxes that would otherwise go in the black bin. Now, that causes the black bin now it requires them to have a second black bin. If instead they go with the blue bin, there's no cost for the blue bin, but there is for the black. So that's one example in which just by going through the education of the fact that the cardboard could just as well go into a blue, and we always would want that to be very forthcoming for the managers to know that it's as simple as adding a blue bin. Now, if that's already the case and they're maxed out on their recycling, then of course that's not an option anymore to reduce their cost. But we want to at least be able to go over this assessment and engagement with the property owner or the manager of the building.
But beyond that, because there's a limit, right? Mr. Krikorian stated there's a X number of waste that's pretty much set. What are the factors that you'll consider before you start bringing us a suggestion that we need to make a policy change?
In terms of other things that we would be looking at is anything that is in the order of the extra charges to ensure that those are being applied the way there should be. But beyond that, at this point, we don't have any kind of subsidy or any kind of cost reduction that we can offer.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Mr. Cedillo?
Well, it is what it is.
Mr. Krikorian, did you have additional questions you had asked me to come back to?
I'm so sorry. Just two quick ones. First of all, on page 15, there's a reference to the bins being left in the public right-of-way subject to fines and confiscation. Sometimes, as we've heard today from the members of the public who came to speak, sometimes there may be ambiguity as to who's responsible for that, whether it's the hauler or the business. Who gets fined? How do you enforce that?
Who would get the fine notice?
Actually, the way it works right now is the fine is against the property owner. If it's identified that it's a property owner placing the bin out in sight, it's specific. If it's a bin just placed, say, in the street and is left there, we'll call it abandoned, then it would be against the RSP or the hauler that owns that bin. It is specific. It's who's kind of determining who placed the bin there. Typically, there's inspectors that go out site and try to figure out what's going on before there's just a fine or confiscation of the bin.
Okay.
And it's usually a determination of who's putting the bin there.
Okay. And then finally, in response to one of the questions about LA Sand getting full cost recovery when it steps in because of delayed collections and so on, and the response was LA Sand has never needed to service Recycla customers, at least since February. I guess my question is, when should we? Is there a clear delineation in the policy, in the franchise agreements or otherwise as to when LA Sand can step up, take care of customers' needs, and then get full cost recovery from the hauler? Is that clear in the franchise agreement? Is there some bright line on that?
There is not a bright line in the franchise agreement of when LA Sand would take over a customer. It's usually on a case-by-case basis. Typically, what happens is when a customer calls our customer care center, and we encourage all customers to call LA Sands Customer Care Center, is there's decisions made by the operator at that time. If someone's claiming it's been a very long period of time since a bin's collected, they're citing there's a potential health issue, that call is escalated to both LA Sands contract management team as well as the service providers. So we track those specifically, and it's usually there's a requirement that just there's a higher level of oversight that will get response back from the service provider of when that service was actually provided and when they've taken care of that. And we've been able to track that and take care of those escalated calls. So there isn't a bright line of if it's this scenario, LA Sand takes over.
All right. Thank
On the dashboard, council member, we do have tracking when the call come in and when it's closed. We also want to know when it's open. So during the initial transition, we did move in anytime the customer said, I have been serviced in 3 days or so. So we made the executive decision. We moved in, we cleaned it up, but we haven't had to since February. But once we give you the dashboard, you'll be able to track each customer when they called in, when the call was closed, and by hauler.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing I neglected to mention earlier was some of the council districts, we have equestrian uses, including mine, and something that wasn't anticipated at all in developing this contract was the organics component, and I know that we've discussed that in the past. Has there been any conversation about the base fee? I think that I made a move to exempt this use in terms of the Recycla program, and maybe that's something that we need to get a report back to or have an offline conversation. But that's just something that I'm not clear on yet.
Yeah, I think that would be good if you ask us to come back.
Okay, thank you.
You will. Okay, so this item is not for, we're not taking any action on this item. This was simply a verbal report back, but you all noted the questions that were asked of you, and so if you would include all those as part of your update at our next verbal update, which should be sometime early next year.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Members, we're going to move on to items 2 and 3. I believe Mr. Koretz had began to make a verbal amendment to item number 2. We weren't there yet. Can you please read, Mr. Prieto, those 2 items into the record? And I believe Mr. Cedillo is going to make those amendments or additions to what initially Mr. Koretz was going to mention on item number 2, and I think he's got his own. So why don't you go ahead and read those into the record?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Item number 2 relates to motion Rodriguez-Cedillo relative to instructing the Bureau of Sanitation report on the feasibility of exempting mobile home parks from the Recycla program and resuming residential service by the Bureau. And then number 2, motion Englander-Martinez relative to the Bureau of Sanitation reporting on China's recycling ban and its effects on the program and related matters.
Okay, before we move on to item number 2, Mr. Cedillo, are there any questions on item number 3? Okay, seeing none, you want to go ahead and make your changes?
Yes, Mr. Koretz asked that on his behalf to put forth a request for a report back on the impacts of the creation of an ordinance to create carve-outs for nonprofits and for low-income housing and substituting in sanitation pickups.
That's it? Carve-outs for nonprofits and low-income housing. Can you please include that on the report for item number 2? Okay, any other changes? Seeing none? Okay. And so those 2 items will be approved. Any other questions, members? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.